Hello once again, namaste. In my earlier videos, I said that concepts and images are important for thinking and that thinking is based on these. But it's not only concepts and images, but our words and language which are important in our thinking process. So this video is about thought and language and the development and use of language. So it's very interesting to know how what we speak influences our thoughts and what we think influences what we speak. So let's get started. So there are three views on language and thought. The first is language as a determinant of thought, wherein we will study how language determines the contents of our thought and how there are categories of thought which are influenced by language. The second view is language as a thought as a determinant of language, how thought precedes our language development and determines our language. And the third view is that language and thought have different origins. They develop separately and merge later as we grow. So, the first thing, language as a determinant of thought, in Hindi and other Indian languages, we have many words, particular words for each relationship. For example, mother's brother and father's elder brother, father's elder younger brother, and it could be mother's sister's husband, father's sister's husband, and so on. We have different words for these relationships. Whereas in English, we use only one word, that is uncle. Similarly, some tribal languages have only two or three names for colors. They can recognize only two to four color terms. But in English, we have many terms for colors. So, what do you think? Do such differences matter for how we think? So, Benjamin Lee Whorf studied about the relationship between language and thought. And he said that language is a determinant of thought, it influences our thinking. And he came up with linguistic relativity hypothesis. Here he said that language and linguistic categories that we use when we talk will determine how we think. It's also called linguistic determinism. Thought as a determinant of language was the belief of a psychologist, Jean Piaget, and he said that thought always precedes language. He said that children have a mental representation of the world around them. They observe our behavior, they imitate our behavior, and this imitation, he said, happens without thinking. This happens without language. So, this kind of thinking occurs without language. And he said that language is only a vehicle of thinking, and the capacity to understand words requires the knowledge of the meaning of each word. So, he said that thought is something that is very necessary for development of language and how language is understood by the person who is speaking and by the person who is listening. And when we come to different origins, we are going to discuss about the view of Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky. He said that thoughts and language develop separately in a child before 2 years of age. After 2 years of age, they merge, but before 2 years, thought is pre-verbal and the child experiences thought more in the form of action. For example, when the child cries, it's because of feeling uncomfortable rather than because of any thoughts. At 2 years, the child expresses thought verbally and his speech reflects rationality. He manipulates thoughts using soundless speech. So, this is the time when language and thinking merge, they become interdependent. Then, after two, there is development of conceptual thinking. Uh, this depends on the quality of inner speech, whereas vice versa is also true, wherein speech depends on our thoughts. So, this is the theory of different origin of thought and language. So we also have need to know that sometimes a language happens without thought when we speak without thinking much, right? Like for example, exchanging pleasantries in a gathering, a social gathering. It's more mechanical when you say namaste or good morning, how are you? So it's not thought driven and it's very automatic. Also, thought can happen without language, like anything which is movement based, where actions are involved. So here, language is not involved. But when these two overlap, that is, language without thought and thought without language, verbal thought and rational speech happens, and this is the most powerful form of communication. We have been speaking about language, how language influences thought, how thought can influence language. But what exactly is language? So, language is our ability to use different, sorry, language is our ability to use a diverse set of symbols and rules to combine them so that we can communicate any information. So, it consists of, as you know, different sounds. When we combine sounds, we make words. When we combine words, we make sentences. And then we can talk or write in paragraphs. So, language consists of sound and symbols and their grammatic rules, communication, and semantics. So, there are three core features of language: symbols, rules, and communication. What are symbols? Any words which represent objects, people, or events. As a child is growing, he learns these through real life experiences. What is the exact meaning of the word home, the word school, anything? The meaning of a particular word. And rules, language follows specific order and structure, and we don't change the order when we speak. For example, when I say I am going to school, it is not a random arrangement of words. There is a subject, there is a predicate which follows the subject. Next is communication. It's about how we share everything, our thoughts, feelings, our intentions, and this can be verbal or non-verbal. Now we will learn about stages of language development. It is important to know this because we are learning about the connection between language and thought, and stages of language development will tell you about how these two are connected and how they influence each other to such a great extent. So, language development happens in a particular pattern, regardless of which country the child is born. All the children follow that particular sequence of language development, though the age or the uh, number of months or years it takes for them to talk will vary. So, speech, like I said, language development follows a pattern from crying and then cooing to babbling at 6 months, echolalia at 9 months, and then one word which is used meaningfully, the child knows the meaning of that word at around 1 year. Then holophrasic, where one word becomes a sentence. So the child uses one word instead of one sentence. Then, by the time the child is 1.5 years old, he learns the two-word stage, and by the time the child is 2.5 to 3 years, he starts speaking grammatically correct language. And only after three will the child master the mother tongue. So, psychologists wanted to learn how language is acquired. Here, they argued that initially they argued that it's nature and not nurture, or more nurture than nature. There was this debate all the time. And then they concluded that both were important. So the behaviorist view proposed by Skinner said that language is learned through association, uh, through the environment or nurture. So through association, through imitation and reinforcement, when we praise the child for having learned some words or speaking the right sentence. And Chomsky was of the innate view, wherein he said children are born with an inbuilt language ability. He used the term language acquisition device. He said that there is something called universal grammar. Children naturally acquire grammar without formal teaching. We don't, if you observe, teach children grammar. You don't teach the child this is how you form a sentence, subject, and then predicate. The child learns it by himself as he grows. And Chomsky, who was of the innate view, or he said heredity influences language development, said that there's a critical period for language learning. So, as we grow, we first learn mother tongue at home, and when we start going to school, we learn a formal language, and then as we grow older, we learn multiple languages. And this journey from learning simple sounds to multiple language is something remarkable. And psychologists have said that there's more than grammar to learning language, because they said pragmatics is also important. Learning how to communicate relevantly in different social gatherings is important for children. So, with this, we come to the end of the topic language and thought, and I will meet you in the next video. This is the end of the chapter on thinking. Thank you so much.